Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Ann Reardon and this is an episode of Debunking where I take viral hacks that you have sent me and I put them to the test to see if they are real. Today we have some particularly dangerous ones, but before we get to that, this one was sent to me by so many of you. The original post says, avocados stay good forever if you put them in water in the fridge. These have been in here for 2 whole weeks while the control group on the counter rotted. They're perfect. I'm speechless. Let's test it out. I've bought a whole lot of avocados on the same day from the same shop and I chose ones that are all still hard. I'll put this row in the fridge. Let's put the top row in water in the fridge, a W for water, and this bottom row is just going to be left on the counter at room temperature. Pop those in the fridge, there we go. And 4 days later, these are 2 of the ones that were kept in water in the fridge. They still look great. They've got a nice texture, they can be sliced, they look beautiful inside, there's no discoloration on the outside. They mash beautifully and they look good, they're fresh. These are the ones that were just kept in the fridge, not in water. And they look very much the same as the other ones. They look really nice inside, there's no discoloration, they look nice on the outside, mash beautifully. I can't tell any difference. Now, this one was the one that was on the counter, and this is a different story. It's very discolored. This one is not as discolored, but it is still very soft. And you can see, even though these 2 avocados were stored in the exact same way, this one looks quite a bit worse. And that's why I'm actually cutting open multiple avocados so that we can get an accurate picture of what happens. And then I left all of those for another 10 days to get us to day 14. Here they all are. The one that was stored in the water looks the best on the outside. But once you cut it open on the inside, these 2 fridge ones are pretty indistinguishable to me. This fridge one is fairly soft, but it's not crazy. It's not really super soft. It's good to use. And this is the fridge in water. This particular avocado looks slightly softer than the other one, but once I opened multiple, they're all very similar to each other. If I served these to you on a plate, I just don't think you'd notice the difference between the 2. Can you tell which is which? This is the one that was in water, and this is the one that was just in the fridge. This one is obviously not the best way to store avocados. Don't just leave them on your counter. Put them in the fridge, but I wouldn't bother putting them in water. Next, Lance sent me this video by MetDan, which shows how to make your own power plug. They take kinetic sand and push a plug into it to make a mold, and then pour molten metal into it, add the USB cord, and you have yourself a metal power plug. Wow, that's dangerous. I just don't understand why people make these sort of videos. Well, I understand they're doing it for the outrage, for the comments, which increases engagement, which increases views, but surely you'd have some level of moral conscience where you go, that's just wrong, that's just dangerous, I just shouldn't do that. Like, where's the line? Like, there is no line, obviously. Well, I'll make it so we can see what would happen. I'm going to use tin because tin has a low melting point, so we can just melt it over the stove, which looks like what they did because they just used the coffee pot to melt it in. When you're at a second-hand store looking at weird things, if you happen to find something that's a dull silvery colour, flip it over and look for a stamp that says pewter. Now, modern pewter is 85 to 95% tin mixed with antimony and copper. But be warned, old pewter contained lead, especially before the 1970s, and lead is highly toxic, especially to your brain. So you don't want to melt anything with lead in it and breathe in those fumes, especially if there's children around with their developing brain. Just don't take any risks there. So what you can do is buy pure tin in a bag. This cost me $15. Or you can buy pewter. This was $4, and just look for a stamp that says lead free. Or you can get a lead testing kit, which will turn pink or red if there's lead present. So there's no lead in this one. Heat up a pan and add in the tin. I got this pan from the second-hand store too because I don't want to ruin my fry pan. Nothing's happened yet. Let me fast forward a couple more minutes for you. And now we have liquid tin. This is not an activity for kids. Tin melts at 232 Celsius or 450 Fahrenheit, so much, much, much hotter than boiling water. Let me add the tankard. This is just amazing, watching something so solid just melt down and disappear into a puddle. Push the plug into the kinetic sand like they did. Now, I'm not sure if glass is the best choice for this because it is going to get pretty hot, but anyway, pull out the plug and now pour the molten metal into the mould. I'm not going to bother adding the USB cord because I know this won't work. Then we're going to have to let that cool down. While we're waiting, let's melt some more things. Now let me test if you can use a silicone mould for tin. I know silicone can take high heat, but this would have to be at the maximum end. Pour it in. Is that smoke? Yes, I'm not happy with that smoke. Hopefully we don't get a hole and liquid tin running everywhere. I decided to put the whole thing into water just in case. Once it's cooled down, tip it out. And it actually worked. That's heaps better than I thought it would be. Give it a quick polish with a Dremel and it looks like this. Now that's pretty cool. I'm going to have to give this away to one of my patrons. So if you're a patron, head over to patreon.com/h2ct and find out how to enter. Back to the plug. Pull it out of the sand. My sand is definitely not coming off as easily as theirs did. And this is still quite hot, so let's drop it into some cold water and get that all off. And look at that. The kinetic sand definitely casts really well. It's a little bit bumpy or grainy looking on the edges, but that's understandable. But even though this one is the right shape, the proper one is completely different on the inside. You've got the plastic housing on the outside, and then if I open it up to show you what's inside, you can see you have two separate wires coming from the two prongs. The wires are not joined together. Let me use batteries to illustrate what happens if the wires were to cross. So we've got our battery pack as the power source, then we have our two wires coming out, and then you'd usually have an appliance here. So in this case, I'm just going to add a light bulb across. And you can see that the light bulb lights up, and that's because we have a circuit and that electrical current can flow around, and that's what makes the globe light up. But what would happen if instead of having two separate wires here, we have a solid metal plug? Then we can get current to flow across here. So if I add that, you'll see the light bulb goes out. If I take it off, the light goes back on, and that's because the electricity likes to go the path of least resistance. So instead of going around and through the light bulb, it's now mainly going this way. And I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there is still a tiny amount of current going through the globe, but it's mainly going around this short circuit. And apart from the light going out, it looks okay. But here's what's really happening. In this diagram, we have zero current flowing at the moment because there is no circuit. If I complete the circuit, we now have 0.9 amps flowing around nicely and the light globe is turned on. Now let's get another wire and add that across the middle, and see the difference is not just the path of current that's changed. There's now a huge amount of current flowing because there's nothing stopping it. There's no load, there's no resistance, and this will eventually cause heat and a fire. Now I can feel already that this battery pack is getting hot, but to show you, I'll put some chocolate on the batteries. And now you can see for yourself, those batteries are getting pretty hot, and if I left them we could get smoke and a fire, and I don't want to do that, so I'll take that off. Now these batteries are only 1.5 volts each, whereas the power supply in Australia is 240 volts. So think about how hot that is going to get how quickly that's going to happen if you had this situation with the mains power rather than just the battery. I have an extension cord here and it's not plugged into anything. There is no power because I don't want any power to flow through me when I touch the metal. Now if I plug in the other end and turn it on, 3, 2, 1, we instantly lost power. The reason for that is our house is fitted with an overcurrent protection device. It's picking up that huge surge in current and immediately flicking the breaker as a safety measure so that we don't get a fire, and I'm grateful for that. We also have a residual current detection system which detects if any current is leaking from the system and, for example, going into a human, so that would flick off straight away as well in order to save lives. But not all older houses have those protective measures in place. A friend of ours, when he was just a kid, found out the hard way what happens if you don't have those in place, and I'm going to let him tell you his story so that we can all learn from it.
Hi Anne, and hi to all your subscribers.
Thank you so much for joining us. I was hoping that you could share with us the story of when you were only 6 years old when you tried to fix the Christmas tree lights.
Yeah, like I had my little pocket knife. I thought, you know what? I think the contacts there was like a 2-part plug for the Christmas tree lights. Needed a bit of a clean out, and after that, should be good to go. What I didn't realize is that part that was connecting to the lights, and then that other end was connected to the wall behind the cabinet. And I didn't know that it was still plugged in there. As soon as I made contact to clean out the little contacts on that plug there, it was this instant paralysis. When there's an electric current that goes through your muscles, it actually tenses up. So once I made contact there, the muscles in my hand just locked up and there was just no way I could actually let go.
What were you feeling at that stage? Do you remember?
Kind of feels like pins and needles kind of sensation, but you can't breathe, you can't move, you can't see anything. You just kind of feeling this like surge of power just going through your body there.
So you've got electricity flowing through you, you're locked on with your hand, you wouldn't have even been able to speak, you're struggling to breathe. What did you do?
Just with my mind, I just cried out to like anyone, I just cried out to God, God help me. And I believe he saved me that day.
It's amazing that you're still alive. What happened next?
I can't remember what happened for a little bit there. We had some visitors over our house from overseas. And it's actually the smell of my burning flesh that actually told them that something's wrong. And then they came looking and they turned off the power. It took a little while for me to come to. Right here is where I actually had the pocket knife. And basically the skin there was this charred black. If you kind of think of like burning your steak to charcoal, that's basically what it was. The doctors were amazed I was still alive. We're trying to work out how to repair my hand. My uncle just dubbed me the miracle boy. He just couldn't believe. You just don't see people, you know, who have these kind of scars because one, they're all dead or they've got stumps for hands. Definitely, guys, stick to cooking. Don't cook yourself. It's not worth it. You know, go buy a second-hand plug or something if you want to save some money, or buy one online. It's not worth your life. You want to keep living many years to come, you know, cooking extraordinary things.
Awesome. Thanks, Raina. Such great advice. So don't follow that hack. At best, you'll short your power. At worst, you'll get really, really hurt, or you could even die. Don't muck around with electricity. It's just way too dangerous. Next, I have this hack that was sent in to me by Ian, and this is a clip by Crafty Panda where they are trying to cook meat on molten metal, and then when they serve it up, it even says safe to eat. Now, I'm not sure exactly what metal they're using. At the start of the video, it talks about melted aluminium and they have a forge that they're melting things in, but by the time they get to this point of the video, they're melting things just on the stovetop, which would suggest it's probably tin. So let's give it a go. I've got my melted tin, add a piece of meat, flip it over, and it's done. Now, if we take a closer look, it is cooked, but it has chunks of metal on it. That's really going to hurt your teeth if you try and chew on it. And if you got past that and swallowed it, any of these sharp edges could cut your throat or your intestines. And if the metal was not food grade and absolutely totally pure, it could contain other metals that may be toxic, like lead. So that was a definite fail. Thank you so much to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you have a hack that you'd like me to test, you can send it to me on Twitter or you can email it to me. There's an email address in the description below. Make sure you do send a link to the original video so that I can check it out. If you liked this episode, make sure you let the algorithm know you did by liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, turning on the notification bell and all of that stuff, and watch more videos and make it a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.